Thanks, Sean.
Awesome.
Okay. You're in the mirror. Pretty good. I like. Yeah. Like. We can. Yeah. So I have a question. Where you're the proprietor with a whole lot of grass.
Yes.
Yeah, they're dealing with that. And you know, all stuff now.
Yeah, it's a never ending battle.
I know.
Awesome.
Because I want to make sure I get it.
Yeah, it's never ending.
So these guys,
You deal with stuff like
these
that.
elsewhere.
I mean, that's hard to do.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to the 4 p.m. work session. And looks like all council members are present with the exception of Vice Chair White, who should be joining us fairly soon. And as you notice, we none of us have microphones in front of us. So we're hopefully those online will be able to hear us okay. I guess if you can see your words on the screen, then it means they can probably hear us okay. I don't know if there are any calendar items we needed to talk about real quick. Janine?
Maybe just one. Next week, the 14th, we are planning on continuing the work session after the meetings. The meeting shouldn't be too long. We've got the RDA budget presentation and the NBA budget presentation. So, you know, maybe 30, 45 minutes. And Fred will be here from LRB to have some additional discussion about the water rates increases. And then there's also one other item that administration is proposing some changes to the fees, to the discounts that they give to people who qualify. So we'll be covering both of those after the work session. And then it is budget season. So traditionally you have opted rather than to have Thursday meetings to continue the work session after a meeting if needed. So we'll continue to do that if needed.
Okay. And so, and we have maybe designated some Thursdays in case we want to change rather than staying here till midnight. Maybe one night we could maybe do a couple hours on a Thursday. So I think, yeah, and Janine set that out. So see what that brings. Hopefully. All right. And on that, looks like Vice Chair White's joining us. So we'll, let's jump into the agenda review for our city council and special RDA meeting tonight. So after, well, as part of our acknowledgements, we are going to acknowledge the Gold Foundation will be here to talk about the history of the Ogden Marathon. So we'll turn some time over to Carolyn Brierly to sort of discuss that. And following the acknowledgements, we have approval of minutes. Councilmember Myers, that looks like falls to you on the April 2nd meeting. And then we have our consent item, the financial principles, which we reviewed last time we were together. So any questions on that? Should be pretty straightforward. Then we'll follow that up with a public hearing on the 2024-2025 annual action plan. And Jeremy Smith and Kathy Fuentes will be here to present on that. And go.
If you want to let Glenn maybe speak to some changes that will happen.
Yes, yeah, we got some numbers back late from HUD. And so Glenn, if you don't mind, just.
Yeah, I'm just gonna come up here real quick, so I'm more centrally located than, rather than trying to talk way back there. So, yeah, so HUD got their final numbers to us today, and you guys can correct me if I get anything wrong. So what we have, they have updated the annual action plan, the final annual action plan. They've included the public comment that we received through the 30-day public comment period. So all of that has been updated. I sent that to you an hour or so ago. And so we've got some language for you if you want to substitute that exhibit to the resolution to have the final annual action plan versus the draft plan that was in your packet. So if you have any questions about that, I think it was about a, what, $40,000 or so difference. So nothing huge. The Choto line changed a little bit. The balancing account, which is what they mentioned in the work session, was going to be the quality neighborhoods. So that went down 33,000 to balance that out, and then just a little bit in the administration, I believe, because that's a formula. Right? So those are the changes, not huge, but in order for us to avoid either having to table it or get these changes, months from now in the mid-year change, that's an option for you all if you're comfortable with that, just to make that substitute for the final instead of the draft action plan.
Any questions on that or sound good?
Yeah, the only thing that I was reading through that, the only thing that you might want to change, and I don't know if it needs to be changed now or the next, but it still has Jared as the acting director. You might want to put it as that. Because I think the timeline's from July, right? July started.
So on a motion tonight, you had some wording that you had highlighted in yellow. Is that now negated because we have the?
No, so that language would actually substitute it. So we didn't have time to update your packet.
Yeah.
So what's in your packet, if you follow the link, is the draft plan.
Right, okay.
And so if a hard copy, if somebody wants that, or somebody wants the version, we send it all to you, but if somebody else wants that, we can make that available to them. But yeah, that language would actually make the substitute.
No.
All righty.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. All right, then we will have a report from the Planning Commission, discussion on the short-term rental ordinance amendments. And we also, on that, we've had a lot of discussion on that. There is some ordinance amendment language. If the feeling of the council is that the parking restrictions are too strict, then we could potentially amend the ordinance to, anyway, that was sent out as well. And Steve, I think, is passing that out as well right now. It's still passed the ordinance, but maybe eliminate that portion if that's what the council feels like. You want to speak to that again, Steve?
Sure, yeah. So the planning division, in anticipation of the short-term rental ordinance possibly being denied tonight, they noticed that there were several council members that had issues with the proposed rule that said no on-street parking. And so they've sent this proposed amendment, which is essentially a motion that somebody could make, a council member could make. If you wanted to, you could make this motion to eliminate that specific section out of the proposal. And then there would need to be a motion made to accept that amendment, and then you could adopt the ordinance that way. And so they specifically tried addressing the parking concern that council members had.
I like that change. It took me a while to scroll to find it when I was running in the packet, but I did finally find it. I like that change. I don't know. I missed the overall conversation with you all last week, but else feels about that.
I'm curious too. Because I know there was a lot of discussion about it. Kind of curious as where how everybody feels about it.
The change.
To change.
The
Yeah,
change
right.
or the
Or
ordinance.
keeping it
or the
as is.
proposed ordinance as it is.
Yeah.
Well, can I had some discussions with Chris afterwards. And I got my concerns pretty well satisfied when he spoke up in the work session and said, these are never enforced proactively. They're always reactive to a complaint. And so that satisfied a lot of concern that I might have had, that these things are just going to be enforced willy-nilly around, and I became a lot more comfortable with that. And I didn't know if that helped anybody but me.
The other thing, I was visiting with Chris yesterday about this, is the intent of this ordinance around short-term rentals is to capture all the ordinance and all the rules regarding short-term rentals within the four corners of an ordinance that pertains specifically to short-term rentals, so that they've got a document that captures everything. And you don't have to go here for one thing, there for another, and over here for another ordinance. It's just a clear understanding that can be presented to short-term rental business owners. And they understand what the circumstances are around their business as it pertains to their relationship with the city. And that made me more comfortable. So I was with those of you that were of the mind that our streets are public, and how can we keep my next door neighbor parks on the street, but if I've got a short-term rental, I can't. And the difference, the distinction is a private citizen versus a business person. And that made some sense for me too, and brought some clarity to it all.
I kind of felt like I could go sort of either way on that. I was concerned that if we did the motion language, would it allow enough enforcement teeth to the code enforcement? And it sounds like they do feel like that it's the case. I was also a little bit concerned about an ordinance like this where it sounds like the problem is maybe just one or two. And so applying that citywide, I just thought maybe there could be more discussion on options to address it that way rather than in the ordinance. And so if we can do the amendment to remove that language, I probably feel more comfortable with that. And then if there are additional steps needed to be made on the onesie twosies, then maybe that's something we can revisit later. That's my feeling.
That's where I'm at.
Okay.
Art, please.
I'm still.
Still.
Okay. You got a couple more hours. All right. Then after that, we will have the mayor's proposed budget. Mayor Nadolski will be here to present the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. Following that, public comment, comments from administration and council members. And then we will move into the special redevelopment agency meeting where we'll have a public hearing on the proposed budget amendment, sales tax and tax increment bonds for the, So, and Justin will be here to address this in that one. Any questions or anything else, any discussion on that?
I just, Brandon had that when he sent the presentations out, he said we won't get the presentation from the mayor's office till 4:30 or 5:30 or whatever it was. Assuming you will send it to us when you get it, so we can have it when he's making this. Great, thank you.
All right. Very good. All right. Let's go ahead and at this time, we'll invite Chief Matthew. Thank you for being here. And our Fire Marshal, Kevin Brown, on up to talk about the 2024 fire restriction plan.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Ritchie and fellow council members and Janine for remembering to tickle file this particular topic. I'm pretty much a backup plan tonight. Kevin's going to do most of the presenting, but what I wanted to mention, especially for the benefit of the new council members, is that we've had snow the last couple of days and we're here talking about fire restrictions. Seems a little bit odd. Well, the reason for that is because of the state legislative changes and law requirements that we have to live within to inform and let people know that we're going to either have fire restrictions and where they're going to be and how we construct those based on historical history. And Kevin will get into that a little bit, but just to give you some background is that 7-10 years ago, there was a few overzealous either local officials, fire marshals, fire chiefs that went out and did total bans on fireworks because they just felt that was the best thing to do. When that happened, that upset quite a few of the vendors of firework contractors because they have to order their fireworks well in advance, January, February, to make sure they have their inventory by the summertime. And so they lay out a lot of money and then they're told now they can't sell any fireworks. And so the state legislature pulled back some of our authority in which we could manage fire restrictions within our communities. And Kevin will talk more about that. But then came along some really significant years for us. You may recall, some of you that were here, they're really heavy drought year. And during that drought year, we actually took total advantage of whatever legal authority we thought we had and put all kinds of bans and restrictions in and banned fireworks citywide. Well, that was because all irrigated vegetation were under restrictions. Most of the irrigated vegetation is tender dry as even the wildland vegetation, because we had told people don't water anything. So our whole community was at risk of a wildland fire, especially when you turn up the heat and you turn up the winds. And so we just felt that was in the best interest to do that. Then we followed with a couple of really wet years, as seen in this year and last year. And you say, well, why would we have fire restrictions? We still have concerns because things can warm up really quick, dry out really fast. And come July 4th and the 24th, we are very concerned about that. Just so you know, historically, we have done years where we've had no fire restrictions at all on the 4th and have had firework restrictions on the 24th because conditions change. We try to treat this issue properly as the state legislature would like us to in terms of managing the actual risk each and every year, not just doing the easiest thing and say, well, whatever we did last year, let's do it this year. If the conditions don't warrant it, we don't do it. And so we try to be practical in that matter, balancing the risk against the restrictions. So with that, I'll let Kevin talk about that. And then he's also going to deal with or address a fire mitigation issue that we're involved in, I think specifically in your area, just to give the council members some information about the background on what we're doing there. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Do you want me at the computer? So I can
Come on
run
up,
the
yeah, come on
slide
up
deck?
here, Kevin. That's great.
If we make it to that. So yeah, the chief mentioned that some years we restrict on the 24th and not on the 4th. Last year was one of those years. It was wet enough that the first fuels, the light fuels were still green on the 4th, and then they dried out by the 24th. So what we're asking you to consider tonight is a historical hazardous condition. There's two ways we can restrict fireworks in the city, and one is the historical rule or ordinance, and the other way is we have current hazardous conditions. And that historical hazardous conditions is kind of the cleanest way to do it. We involve you legislatively. We can plan ahead of time while it's still green and wet outside. And what that state law says that if we provide a map to the county, then the county gathers all those maps and provides it to the state. And if we can show that in 2 of the previous 5 years, we've had historical hazardous conditions for open flames, then we can restrict using that method. So that's what we're asking you to consider tonight. And looking back over the years, we can say about 75% of the time we restrict for the 4th of July, and nearly 100% of the time we restrict for the 24th of July, just the nature of Utah being Utah. It goes from green and wet and cold to next week, it's supposed to be 85 degrees. And once that wet green grass dries out, it doesn't come back and it transfers spark to flame to tree very quickly and easily. So, this all logically makes sense to me. I've got a 14-page cheat sheet with all the Utah laws and conditions, but do you have any specific questions about why or when or how we do the fireworks restrictions?
It made sense to me. Is there ever a time where they can be used above Harrison? That map is always
Yeah.
or highlighted as brown, and the river corridor was highlighted.
Pass these around. I've got some maps.
Yeah, so like last year for the 4th of July, we did allow fireworks citywide. And then by the 24th, it had dried out enough that we did the typical historical restrictions.
Okay,
And that's another thing that's nice about the historical restrictions. We can provide the map to the state, the county, and we can plan on doing it, but we can pull it back at any time. We have a long rainy weekend over the 24th, maybe we say, you
let them
know,
go.
let them go, do fireworks anywhere.
Well, I have a question, and I brought this up before, and you guys adapted to it, but up, north of Second Street, Harrison is pretty well the mountain,
Right,
and it seems like that's maybe, it turns to Mountain Road, and it's 100 yards from
right.
the tinder.
So the new map, it includes that area that you suggested to us. We've adopted that as our new historical.
Wonderful, that looks beautiful.
Yeah, that made a lot of sense and.
Yeah, it made a lot of people
Appreciate
mad
it.
around my neighborhood, but I also didn't want us burning it down.
Right,
That's kind of the deal.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the fear, when we watched fire race through Louisville, Colorado and the California towns. And we look at our mountainside and it's vulnerable. It would be so devastating to this community to lose our mountainside to fire.
That's right.
Another question I've got is this map something that we can or should or require to be posted at firework kiosks?
It is.
Per state law, we have to post that with every retailer in Ogden City.
So even at the grocery store where they sell that, it's posted there?
Everywhere they're sold, and as soon as we determine when the restrictions are gonna start, we have to give that notice.
Right.
We have a list of things that per state law we have to do and notify the councils on that list.
Okay.
So as of this time, predictive services is saying that we're gonna have a rainy and cool first half of May. It's supposed to turn normal second half of May. They're predicting June to be normal, so hotter and drier. And then hot and dry for July. So talking with the state forester, he believes that we probably will not restrict, I'm talking statewide, we can determine whatever we want to do for Ogden separately as a municipality. Probably not restrict for the 4th of July and then restrict for the 24th. So it's looking similar to last year. We have a lot of late rain and a lot of cool weather. So that's kind of what we're leaning towards, but we can pivot with that. And if it turns out that the weekend of the 4th is going to be a red flag conditions, we can restrict. So we wanted your input on that.
Kevin, will you mention what red flag means?
Red flag is any 2 of 3 conditions, which is high temperature, high winds, and low humidity. So if you combine those, if all 3 of those come together, that's really bad. But if any 2 of those come together, it can substantially increase fire spread and fire behavior.
If those conditions converge and it's not possible to meet with council, does the fire department make that call independent?
Yeah,
On their own?
it's interesting you bring that up. When they changed the state law back in 2013, they said that the chief or myself could not enact fire restrictions. But we worked with the legal and the council back in 2013 to have a provision in our city ordinance that allows the fire marshal or the fire chief to enact like an emergency provision. Because if
You've given us the legal authority.
Yeah.
So you've approved it
Okay,
if these conditions exist.
that's in Ogden City ordinance that allows
That's great.
that. Obviously, we want to do it this way and involve the legislative body and do the clean as the state intended. But we did adopt that ordinance that allows that because the last thing we want to do is, well, it looks like the 4th is going to be fine, but then 2 days out, we've got a major windstorm. It's going to be 95 degrees. We want to be able to stop that if possible.
How responsive are you to complaints from people, neighbors that are concerned about it in the restricted area? Of,
People who are complaining that their neighbors are setting off
Yeah,
fireworks or
yeah, that's,
pretty responsive. Around the 4th and on those legal days, we have everybody out and about, including myself and my 2 deputies, and we're basically going from call to call to follow up on those.
Okay.
That's something we've done for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years.
We patrol the restricted areas and hopefully that encourages people to go, oh, I'm not supposed to light them versus citations. Sometimes we've involved the police department when we've had to, when people have just been non-cooperative.
yeah, I got a couple of hot spots that are potential. I'll just tell you what they are.
Yeah,
We can let us know. Yeah, so for instance, in 2021, we had the entire city restricted from fireworks. We actually had police officers on the engines with us, driving around,
Wow.
and they could actually write tickets if necessary. We try to educate and not just go straight to writing tickets, but
is there any ambiguity in Utah laws around fireworks that allow? We had this in Colorado. You can sell them, but you can't light them here. Have you got stuff like that we're dealing with in Ogden where you can buy things that are illegal to put into the air?
no, you can't buy anything from a licensed vendor that's illegal in the state of Utah.
Okay,
But you can buy fireworks in the restricted area because we'll have retailers set up in the restricted area,
yeah,
which always seems strange, but
yeah, that's always had me scratching my head. You don't want fireworks above Harrison, but we've got vendors all along Harrison.
right. But anything that's sold in Utah should be Utah legal.
Okay, thanks.
People do go out of state and
Yep.
get those at any time. All right, sounds great. Well, thank you for that update. And then you had the additional.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the mitigation project at Rainbow, I can.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And just, the fire department held an open house to talk about this mitigation plan and yeah, just if you want to share here, that'd be great.
Okay. So we got some funding from the state after that fire we had above Rainbow Gardens a few years ago. We put in with the state for a grant to do some fuels mitigation in that area. And so we're going to, I can actually go to the last slide here. I've got a photo of the area.
Sterils, maybe.
And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Don't feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Too far. Oh,
Hang on.
I'll let somebody else drive it.
Yeah, let him do it.
Said the last one.
Yeah.
Last slide.
Yeah, right there. So this kind of breaks down what we're going to be doing and where. The first part of the project, and this is probably going to be a multi-year project, is going to be the light yellow zone there that's owned by Rainbow Gardens. Going to try to go in there and get out all the Russian olives and then treat the stumps with herbicides so they don't come back. Those Russian olives burn faster and hotter than the native fuels in there. And then the Ogden City and Weber owned parcels, we're going to do the same thing in those areas and create shaded fuel breaks. So that hopefully if we ever have a fire in there again, we can get on it before it gets up to those houses. You know, it was a close call for a lot of citizens during that fire. I don't know if you remember, but we had a ladder truck set up right on this street, and we were using the ladder to actually spray water on the back of these homes just to keep the flames off. So we very nearly lost some homes. And so that's part of the mitigation. And as part of that, we invited all the homeowners in that area to a little meeting up at Station 2 to describe what we're going to be doing and kind of give them some tips of what they could do to make their home safer. So I can go through that PowerPoint really quickly of what I shared with them. And I've added something to it, just a gee whiz. You know, you're asking about, do we have the ability to enact emergency hazardous conditions? And I've got a reason to talk about that.
Yeah, and there was a few people here on that. Thought there were some good questions. There were questions about some of the areas like around Canyon Cove, but it's privately owned land, so it's not like we could just go in there and clean that section up. And then the metal roofs came up as a question, and they wondered if that was allowed in that area. It looks like it is. So
yeah, there were some good questions that came out. We passed out some paperwork on how they could do a self-inspection on their home after we went through this. But I wanted to talk about the Marshall Fire. This is the one I believe you're referencing. This happened in December 2021. 1,000 homes. I lost my screen. I can get it back. There we go. So this is the Marshall Fire. That's about 6 miles north to south and about 8 miles east to west. The weather that day, 60-mile-an-hour gust, sustained 20 to 30 miles per hour starting around noon. Temperature was 48, humidity was 20%. So not unremarkable conditions. They had a windstorm, but we often have those in December with those events that come off the mountains. Just interesting thing to note, the fire started, I can't see my pointer, right in this area at about 11:50. By 12:08, they were evacuating a Costco in Superior, and that's 6 miles away. That's how quickly that fire spread. On this next slide, I'm going to show you a zoomed in area, and it's this neighborhood right here, just this neighborhood. So this is before the fire, and this is after the fire. And it's hard to, I've tried to count some homes. There's about 150 homes in that area. But if you look closely, you can see there are some homes that are still standing when everything around them is burned. And that's important because those people had hardened structures. think a lot of people, when they envision a wildfire, they envision this flame front that's just coming in and sweeping everything in its path. But the reality is those fires are ember driven. You got firebrands that are an inch big and they're being driven by, 30, 40, 60 mile an hour winds. And they find their way into vents and things. That's what starts fires, starts homes on fire. I wanted to show the scale. It's kind of hard to envision what that previous picture was, but I overlaid it onto Ogden City. And you can see, this is Rainbow Gardens up there in that corner. You can see Harrison. It goes all the way from the foothills almost to Washington. It's a pretty big area. And you see where you overlay that fire onto it. Just that one little area of the Marshall Fire. Significant amount of homes that were lost. About 8 blocks just right there. And so this is the slideshow I went through with the public just to talk about defensible space and home hardening, and the different things you can do in different zones to protect your home. What I'd like you folks to take away from this, when people say, well, I don't have to worry about that. I live below Harrison. A little bit of education. If you can speak to that and put them in touch with us, we'd love to come out and look at their home and tell them ways they can make their home safer. This kind of shows, what the risks are, how fires get started, what you need to do to cover it up. And then we talk through all these items. I clean my gutters out when my basement starts to flood in a spring rainstorm, but you should do it more often than that, apparently. Covering up your vents with metal mesh, super important. And like I said, we want to go around, we want to meet with people individually who are interested in this. We want to show them how they can make their home safer. You can see people like to store things under their deck, but if there's a fire in the neighborhood and there are 1-inch firebrands blowing in a 60 mile an hour wind, this is a lost cause. I just did it. We're applying for a grant to get 200 tree climbing goats. We're really gonna take care of the vegetation problem.
Really cute.
That was it. That's pretty much all I have. Do you guys have any questions about the mitigation project or?
Kevin, you may want to mention that the real grant you've been trying to get for a couple of years.
Yeah, so for several years, we've been applying for a federal grant to get a chipper program going in Ogden where we can, go neighborhood by neighborhood and say there's going to be a chipper in your area in these days. And if you have your vegetation out to the curb, we'll chip it and either leave it on site for mulch or we'll haul it off to the greenways for you. And so that part of that grant would get the chipper, a truck, and a couple of people to run that program during the summer, 2 or 5 months out of the year.
So you see hauling larger branches and that sort of thing away as a impediment to people keeping their
Yeah, we think,
properties clear of.
a lot of people just can't do the work
Stuff,
or they don't have a truck to take it to the green waste or they've got, no way to get these big branches out of there.
How much is a chipper?
They're a lot. I bet, well, he's not here. I was gonna say Justin could probably speak to that, but they're $100,000 plus.
Okay.
The ones that'll do the big branches.
Yeah.
As a matter of information, Park City runs a chipper program every year. I talked to the chief today at our state chiefs meeting. They just hired 3 people. They hired 3 seasonal people every year. And they run it throughout Park City and the community completely participates, creating defensible spaces. And they chip throughout the summer up there. Just to try to provide the protection. You think about Park City and their risk up there on the mountainsides and all the homes tucked into the mountains. It's a real risk up there all the time.
And we've got neighborhoods with, big risk as well. You look in Shadow Valley and we have entire neighborhoods where the scrub oak is just right up to roof line, just from house to house to house. And so that fire spread would be pretty significant.
Kevin, can you talk about, you mentioned this it's an active trail network around Rainbow Gardens. And so with the mitigation plan and the work that's being done, how's that gonna work? You mentioned talking with the Trails Foundation and.
Yeah, we talked with the Ogden Trails Network and we want to work with them and we want to limit it to specific times and days that we might shut that down. And so we would have, signage at the trailheads thing that would be taking place. But we don't foresee any significant long-term closures. We think it would be 2 hours on a random afternoon. You know, try to avoid weekends and nice weather, so. And then there is the yellow line towards the bottom, that is some trail widening. And we're not talking about making it 20 feet wide or anything, but just to give us the potential to use that as a fire break, that birdsong trail.
Good stuff.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right. Up next, we have Glenn Symes to come and talk to us about the capital improvement plan. 5-year plan.
Want to do, let copper thing first.
Oh, whatever. Yeah, we can do that.
You guys want to get out of here before, I'm gonna be here for a while, so. And I'm not ready to eat yet.
Yeah, so a little early,
You guys can get something to eat.
early at the beginning.
I'm sure you're gonna
Yeah.
go get a dinner.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and just do a quick pivot on the agenda. We'll hear from Brady. Want to come on up and talk to us about the lead and copper? That was a legitimate suggestion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
The lead and copper rule revision service line material inventory campaign.
Yep.
And yeah, Justin will be here. It doesn't look like he's here, but
Yeah, we've got Taylor here
We got
to fill
Taylor
in
there.
for Justin just in case, but
we got back.
yeah, we'd originally put this in as an information item and then it kind of got bumped up. So essentially what this is back in December of 2021, EPA and the Division of Drinking Water had rolled out a revision to lead and copper rule. And as part of that, they're wanting all water purveyors and water producers to go out and check their systems for service lines. So basically main line into the houses or into the business service line material types. So historically, there's been a lot of use of lead type material back east. We started not too soon after December of 2021 in doing a lot of research and development internally, going through our permits and our internal documentation and doing some field verifications to start to compile all our inventory on a GIS database. Since then, fast forward to about a year ago, we retained we hired Sunrise Engineering to help us with some of the public involvement because now we've reached a point where we need to engage the public side of things. Okay, to kind of give you an idea as to when this will be due or we need to have to submit this to the Division of Drinking Water will be this October 16th of this year. With that, we're going through with Sunrise with this campaign. And in that packet that would have been provided, there's some survey forms that we're looking to have the public go in and identify, like in their basement as it comes through their foundation or through the floor of their basement, or in crawl space, whatever it might be the scenario for them as to what type of material their pipe is, so that then we can take and record that in the inventory and getting all that information conveyed over the Division of Drinking Water. Trying to think if there's any other major things, just so you can kind of understand too, for the public side of it, how it's written in standard right now is the city owns essentially 1 foot back a curb is what our ownership would be for service lines. So from the main line in the road, 1 foot back curb, essentially, that's mostly where a lot of meters are placed, in some cases not so much, but yeah.
Do you mean 1 foot back toward the house or 1 foot back toward the street?
No, 1 foot back a curb like into the park strip side towards the house. Yep. And then, yeah, essentially from there into the house would be the residence ownership of the service line. With that, on the public side, we've gone through and identified that there's about 1,000 unknowns, service material types. We don't know what material type it will be. On the public side, or I mean, on the private side, it's about 16,000 that we have that are unknown.
So with that, Division of Drinking Water and EPA have come out with some methodologies as to how you can approach those unknowns. And with the help of Sunrise right now this campaign and the survey, we, based on that amount of 16,000, we can do sample sizes of 377 service lines. So we will be looking to engage, or at least 377 responses back of that, say 16,000 plus, to where we can record that in the inventory and have that ready by October. And then we'll work through the public side of that 1,000 that we're also looking to identify, but that's not as pressing as the public or as the private side of things.
So Brady, this is different than the other, this is a different program than we've done in the past. Is that?
So there was a lead copper rule that EPA rolled out in 1989, which essentially banned any lead type materials of being used in any type of systems. And so as part of that, they also rolled out that every 3 years as a system, we have to go out and do lead and copper testing within our system. So we usually identify about 60 locations citywide, but we only have to provide 30 samples or locations back to the Division of Drinking Water. So that's
kind of the same thing.
kind of in tandem with that.
Okay.
Well,
This is asking for things older than 1970 this time, right?
correct. Well, so EPA started at 1989 and older, and then of recent in the last couple of months, Division of Drinking Water has actually amended it back to 1970 and older because there was a shift in the market about 1970s, pushing to go more towards copper at the time, to where a lot of systems phased out of lead at that point in time. So that's 1970, 1989 are kind of the dates. So anything that's prior to 1970 is what we'd be looking to target.
So are they concerned at all about copper pipes soldered with lead solder?
Not at this point. They're strictly just trying to focus mainly on just
Just
lead.
lead pipe? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep, so that's the intent of that. So, but yeah, that's any questions you might have on it. I'm open to have any questions on it. Hopefully it made sense with some of the surveys. We have a landing page on the website, mostly housed under water, but we're working with Mike McBride to have some shortcuts and whatnot for that. But preferably, we're directing residents to try and fill out online, which there's some QRL codes to where they can be able to snap that. It should direct them online to fill that out. Second to that, we would have them take pictures and email in their results. And then third option would be to actually physically come into, say, public services or the municipal building, submit those, and we'll work to get all that information put into our inventory.
So if we've got our sample size of respondents, and is there a threshold that beyond this, if we got 400 and 217 of them are lead, is it at 218, does that trigger further investigation on a?
Yep. So, and there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that they have laid out. We're pretty confident though at this point, like in our findings of the stuff that we already have, 61% of it's copper, 19% of it's galvanized, and then the remaining, 20% or so is about poly and plastic. So we're pretty confident in our findings that we're not going to find lead, but even still in that situation, if we do, there are other preventative measures that the Division of Drinking Water has laid out.
Are any of the city service lines lead?
No.
Okay.
No, that's of those statistics or percentages I just gave you, that would be the city side of what we've investigated of those percentages.
So
of
it's the
61.
pipes going down the middle of the street that feed each house. None of those are.
And this is just targeting just the service line.
Residents, yeah.
Yep, just the service line in itself. But no, there's older materials like cast iron or ductile iron, steel lines, and then of recent, mostly like polyurethane and PVC type materials is more or less what the maintenance are comprised of.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Looks like it.
Thank you, Brady.
Okay, yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
All right. You can get out of here a little earlier.
You know, I've got one where you can, so through wastewater, so let's say our, you know, a lot of water comes out of houses. Is there a way to read that wastewater to see if we've got lead showing up in our wastewater system?
So every year, kind of back to Councilman Heyer's point, every 3 years we go through and we actually put out 60 notices to residents and we'll test our system, like our culinary system. And usually we only have to submit 30, but we usually end up submitting 45 samples of results that we get of testing for lead and copper. With that, when we do that, we also provide a consumer confidence report every year as part of the results that come out of that every 3-year test. I'm not explaining this very well, but
It's easier to test the water than it is the sewer.
Okay,
And so that's why we've opted to go with the water samples from homes and locations we've identified.
so you'll actually physically go into a home and
Yeah, they have,
draw water out of a tap and test it?
yeah, citywide.
Okay.
We've been asked a couple of times. What they do is they give you a little cup about that big. And they say the first thing in the morning before any water runs, fill this thing up and then put it on your porch. It's that simple.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
wonder if the sewer could also pick up like lead coming from paint or other sources of lead, so it
Yeah.
would only be the waters.
Well, and there's other contaminants that could be introduced on the waste side of it that, like kids flushing stuff or whatever it might be.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that
That
would
would,
never happen.
like, we want to try and take it right back to the source to make sure it's as clear and as clean from the pipes and the sources that we're actually delivering. And so if you look in that consumer confidence report, we're actually getting geared up to release it for this year. We have to do it every year before July. It'll actually list what our copper content of the 90 percentile is. I think it's like 2.3 parts per billion, and it can't exceed 15 parts per billion is the threshold that we can't push. So it's very minuscule compared to what the state regulates. So, yeah.
All right, welcome back. Well.
Time to get food?
Yes.
That's funny.
There's probably some of you that could get this presentation at home. We've heard it so many times. I told Steve that maybe he'd get it next year. So you can hear it from somebody else instead of me.
Exciting, Steve. Exciting.
Oh, no, right? Trying to do candy.
I got mine. Yeah.
Martin knows this for sure, so we'll go ahead and go now. All right, so this is the first presentation to go along with the capital improvement plan that's proposed for this year. And just to start with a little background, every year you do adopt budget goals that include a capital improvement element. And for folks who are newer or maybe not familiar with what constitutes a capital improvement project, it's a project that is over $50,000 that adds to the city's quote physical plant. This includes both design and construction and also major rehabilitation and reconstruction. This also includes acquisition of long-term lease of land and projects that require debt financing and borrowing. And then public facilities that may be financed in full or in part by the imposition of impact fees. So that's according to our city code. We don't really have impact fees per se, but that is part of it in case we ever do that. Some of the major funding sources, of course, is as folks know, the general fund. Most of that comes from BDO lease revenue. As far as the schedule goes, we'll go over that in a few minutes, but the BDO lease revenue, we'll talk about that this week. Federal and state grants, BNC road funds, active transportation funds. These are gas tax and quarter-cent sales tax. Enterprise funds, so all of the utilities plus some of the other enterprise funds you'll see in the plans, airport, golf, and medical. Bonds, like we're going to do with the 36-inch water line. And then other funding sources like RAMP and other grants, partnerships. And we do actually have a project that's proposed for funding with TIF funds, so some REA funds. So as far as the budget review goes, for those who've been around for a little while, we used to do this at a different time of the year. And it would come in November. The council would usually look at it around December, January, and then there would be this gap in between the council adopting this 5-year plan that starts in the next fiscal year and the budget actually coming. And so over the years, the last couple of years, we've tried to realign this. So we've shifted the timing. So we'll do this year what we've done the last couple of years and review the CIP with the budget. So we'll do that over the next few weeks. And the reason we did this is that because we felt it allowed a better alignment between the two. So what would happen is when the CIP was proposed in November, the administration is putting it together in September, October, giving it to the planning commission in November, council's getting it in December, January. They don't really know what the budget's going to look like that far out. And so shifting it forward, there's still a bit of a gap in when they have to put that together and submit it to the planning commission, but it's a much closer, the gap is closed quite a bit. And so there's a lot more alignment between what's in that first year, the 5-year CIP, and what's actually in the budget. But because it is a 5-year plan, the CIP, it is still good for a long-term planning document, and we still like to use it that way and keep track of projects that are proposed for funding in future years, so you all can see what was proposed and when that might come along. And so we won't have, other than this one, we won't have individual presentations for the CIP, other than whenever a department is proposing a CIP, we'll talk about it with that department as we go through the budget. So we are anticipating that the CIP would be adopted with the annual budget toward the end of June. So here's that schedule. So today is May 7th. This is just that first overview. Like I mentioned, we'll have BDO lease revenue on the agenda to talk about next week, but not specific projects related to departments. So that'll start on the 21st with CED and fire. And then on the 28th, management services and public services. And that includes all the utilities, parks, recreation, and usually ramp. I think there's one ramp that isn't a public services ramp. So we'll get that figured out. And then June 4th, you can set the public hearing if you are okay to do that for the 18th, and then hold the public hearing and adopt the plan. So just a note about the ranking. So the ranking we've also done differently over the years. When the CIP came at a different time of year, it was a lot easier to have you all rank your projects because then that would inform what would come to the budget a few months later. As we've gotten closer and the alignment's gotten closer, it's really become a bit more of a challenge to try to rank those. And so last year, and I think the year before, we tried to have you all rank the CIP projects while you're reviewing it in the budget. And, you're ranking something, but you're also voting on it at the same time. So your vote sort of is also your rank. And so it didn't really work very well. And so what we did last year is we actually created a survey to send you all so you could take and rank projects. So the one-time projects that were in last year's CIP, for example, you ranked those based on how high of a priority they were, if they didn't get all funding or if they just got partial funding. So that would inform what you received this year. And then the ongoing projects or the perpetual projects, you got to rank if you want to see more funding, the same funding, or less funding. So that information is in your packet. So if you want to take a look at that, the results from that survey from last fall are in there, so you can compare that to what's being proposed. But we'd like to do that again this year. So we won't rank during this process, but we'll rank again in the fall to inform next year. Unless there's other great ideas, and we'd be happy to hear. So just to get into the proposed 25 to 29 CIP, the Planning Commission does review the capital improvement plan, and their role is to review it and make sure it's consistent with the general plan. So there's a state code requirement that if we do a capital project, it does have to be consistent with our general plan. And so they were able to take a look at that in April, and they forwarded a determination of compliance with the exception of 2 projects. So the first one is project EN017, which is 1100 North on Monroe traffic signal. The Mount Lewis plan calls for a roundabout at that intersection. And so their recommendation is if that is preferred, if the traffic signal is preferred, there'd be an evaluation done. And if the traffic signal is going to go ahead, then that plan needs to be updated to make sure that's consistent. And then the next one is the community field house, and the project brief that was submitted for that didn't identify a location. So the planning commission couldn't determine consistency with the general plan because there was no location to review it against. So they're recommending that a location be determined and then checked. So those next couple of slides are just a really high level quick overview and really just some of the basic numbers that are in the CIP. There's 74 projects, 15 of which are new. There's $262.7 million proposed. That's for all departments, all funds, all years. So that's the whole thing. As I mentioned, the projects themselves are broken down into a couple of different categories. So the perpetual, the ongoing projects, and the one-time projects, and then the ramp projects. The one interesting thing I always look at when I look at this is that the majority of the projects are perpetual, but the majority of the funding is for one-time projects. So you can kind of see how that shakes out there. And then as far as proposed funding for department, these are all the general funds. And this is broken down into that first year of the 5 years, so FY25, and then all future funding and then total funding for each of those funds. And it's important to note on this, with these numbers, these are numbers that are proposed in the CIP and not in the budget. We'll talk about that in just a second. So that's all the general fund, all the enterprise fund, the same information. Yes, I didn't see that note. So the total for the FY25 funding in the CIP is just over 117 million, and then again, it's 252.7 million total for all projects. And
It's very dramatic.
what's that?
Makes it very dramatic.
That's right, there
Dramatic
should have been
pause.
music.
Yeah.
So we did get the budget, we got the line item last week, and so we were able to compare these two here. The information you have in your packet didn't have the budget information in there because we didn't quite have that yet. But you can see that $117.3 million proposed for the first year of the CIP compared to what's actually being proposed in the budget. Now, that difference is about $91 million. The last couple of years, we've had a number of these where what's proposed in the first year of the CIP and what's proposed in the budget are way off. And the reason they're way off is because of these two projects that are listed there. The 36-inch water line, $86.6 million. And then the TSA terminal holding room, the expansion of that. Those two together make that $91 million. So bond funding for the Canyon water line and then the TSA holding room, that is some existing funding plus some grant funding. So that will all be recognized when we actually get that. So that doesn't show up in the budget typically until we actually get the funding for that. So that's why you see that discrepancy between the two. So this, I understand this is very tiny. It's also very tiny in the packet, so you don't, no expectation if you read this. But I did want to just talk about this a little bit. So this is something that we put together. This is there's a lot of information on this spreadsheet, but it's an overview of each of the projects. So it's got the total cost by departments, the project number, the administrative ranking is summarized here. It's also in the CIP itself. The strategic plan directives that each project applies to, the total project cost, what's proposed for funding in fiscal year 25 in the CIP, as well as what's in the budget. So this is one that wasn't updated in your packet. So moving forward, now that we have the budget numbers, that'll be included in there, and then all the future funding that's planned. So next steps, unless you have any other questions for me, is just to review this along with each of the departments over the next few weeks. And then any changes that you all have, we can talk about and implement if you're so inclined. And then final adoption is planned for June 2. Any questions for me? That was very quick.
You mentioned that the planning commission got to review this. I think they're actually supposed to be required to have it for 30 days.
Yeah, so there's a requirement that they get it, I believe it's March 1st. And then they have to, the council office has to have it within 45 days of that.
Right.
So they typically have it, they get it that March 1st. They review it and make a recommendation the first meeting in April, and then there's a couple of weeks and we get it after that.
I just remember historically that often the planning commission didn't actually have it for 30 days. The
Yeah.
planning staff did.
Yeah.
But they got it, in the packet before the meeting and and then they had to vote on it. So do you know if anything's changed downstairs from?
I don't, as far as the planners actually getting it to the planning commission. I mean, I think it's the same, that it does get submitted to the planners, but I'd have to check and see how quickly they get that too. As far as I understand it, they do a work session on that. That meeting.
Yeah, that's all
March.
good. I just think it's important that, it's like a phone book.
Yeah.
That they have to review and
I think,
you're the most recent, is that? what is
Yeah,
your
and the
experience?
we generally had a work session on it and it was clearly understood as put forth by planning staff that, as Glenn stated at the beginning, does it conform to the general plan? We have no input into, its priorities or any funding or anything like that. And it was basically an evening where we heard a presentation and then voted, and that was it. And this year I attended that one, and the two items that were bumped out were done so, by the commission, so.
Good, okay.
Yeah, but never experienced, hey, you got this 30 days in advance, we're gonna visit this formally.
Yeah,
And
we
next
pushed that,
month's
we pushed
meeting.
that the planning commission was supposed to get it in one meeting. Have the work session and
And
then
then
vote
hear it.
on it,
Yeah, no, we never,
but
That's not
I'm
my
not sure what's
recollection.
happening.
I would guess by the timing, probably not, because I think they do get it that 1st of March. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
that would give them enough time to get it on their agenda for that first.
It also seems likely that, practical that, multiple entities could be reviewing this thing at the same time. It wouldn't necessarily mean, just because they're supposed to give it to us, doesn't mean they couldn't make a change or something. That's kind of what occurs to me. I know the timeline has been the issue.
Yeah.
And you'd probably know better if that can happen or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could look at the timeline. I mean, that's imposed on ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think we could-
I do like the improvements that have been made so far, Tom. That's been much better than the past.
the ranking,
No, just putting it with, closer to the
with the
budget
budget.
and.
So, hey Glenn, I have a question too. I think this is maybe, because I come from a very map-centric group. So we have a map in here. Is there a way to do a GIS map where we could actually go on and push this little green button and it would show what that project is and
Do we have, I thought we did have an interactive map, but maybe not quite yet. I'm pointing to Justin.
Yeah, Justin, you want to come up and join the conversation?
And this map, by the way, doesn't have any legend, so I don't know what's green and what's yellow. And then there's some green that's outside the city limits, and I'm just trying to,
Oh, I'd have to see which map you're.
I don't know, it's
referring
the
to
one in our
in the
packet.
packet. Yeah, so that's the map that we've usually always included in prior years. We actually have implemented a new software for our CIP book. And so there should be a link in the packet to that as well. It's an interactive online where you can go into a project and it'll have a map in the project where it would show the location of it. And it's a little more interactive with looking at charts, and it's not just a static PDF.
Yeah.
So the PDF that's included in the packet is created from that, but that is something that's published online right now on our budget page. A link to that online version of the.
So it's somewhere
CIP
in the
book.
packet.
It's on page.
I will send that
2.
out. I don't think I got that.
It's page 13 of the overall 293 pages, or 2 of the transmittal.
13,
Yeah.
So that's the map, that's the static map.
Oh, is it the static? I just found it. And that must be it.
Yeah, so we elected to go with a new software for this.
Yeah.
They're a newer company or newer group that's built that's specific for capital planning. And so we're hoping in time it'll continue to improving it better. It does have a few limitations as far as the map. I had hoped that there would be a little bit more to be able to overlay and see all the projects in one map, but as of right now, they don't have that. It's just an individual project you identify in the project where that on a map where that project would be. And so
Well, I mean, I don't know if they can or not, but it would be great to see that link and then, I mean, I know that we have Esri, so I don't know if we could just. That up there.
Something we'll take a note on and for sure. I know that engineering does use Esri a lot for projects they have going on.
Yeah,
But as far as planning, yeah, right now this is the tool.
yeah, maybe send that link, that'd be great.
Like the idea.
Yeah,
Way
then you
to
go,
go.
oh, hey, that, and then that way people can understand, like, oh my gosh, this is going on in my neighborhood. Oh, look, it's $15 million of work going on
Yeah.
in my neighborhood. And I think it's really important to just have people start to feel that.
It's a great point. On the WACOG Transportation Subcommittee, they have a map that is exactly like that, where you can go and see what projects are being done, and you click on the map and it opens up and you've got before and after pictures or during or whatever.
Yep, briefs and.
Yep, where the money's coming from, all that information.
That'd be
is
cool,
fantastic.
yeah. Thanks, Justin. Or if we're gonna do this map in our PDF stuff, we might want to throw that in there.
Yeah, like this is the off of their page,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's like there's no legend yet.
that's all. Right?
Is that Ogden?
I think it is this way.
Yeah, this is north.
Okay.
Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Up next, we have administrative update, and we'll first invite Kristen McBride to come on up and talk to us about the Union Station. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Oh, welcome, Vera. Yeah, come on up as well, of course.
It was.
Not empty anymore.
I don't know what was going on with my file, but it was empty the first time. But,
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Mara invited me today to give you kind of a quick update, recap of what we've been up to at Union Station for the celebration of the 100 years. Am I running this?
Yeah.
I agreed, I'd love to give you an update. We've had a fun 166 days. I stopped by the countdown clock today to snap the picture. And we've had 166 days and 199 to go as part of our centennial years. So it's a fun snap this morning. I think most of you attended or have been down to visit the Heart of Ogden exhibit. It explains the history of Union Station and the people that it affected over the 100 years that it's been standing. Those 3 panels that you see in that picture are 3 of 13, so it's 13 large panels. You can walk around and learn about the decades of Union Station. There's also some exhibits of artifacts on display in some cases. And then also there's a live video playing of the oral histories that were taken as part of this exhibit. And there's a working railroad model of Union Station, a couple tracks around it, so it's kind of fun. On 5/2, we saw the Mercy car go. It's safely made it to Wyoming just last week. And then we had the 75th anniversary as part of our celebrations back in February. So those were very successful offerings. And then just recently in April, we had one of our smaller educational series that Hope and the museum team did with community members that came to learn about strong foundations, and that was celebrating the day the first concrete was poured for Union Station. And then just recently on the 3rd, we have the Golden Spike visit. I think I saw most of you down there to come and check it out. It was pretty cool. We got a really great community turnout as well as school. There's a picture down there of one of the school tours that came and learned on site about that. We've had a really great press and media attention. This isn't probably even half of what's been out there, but I just threw a couple examples of our press and media attention. We've been on Good News Utah on the morning show live, and then also just recently ABC4 Utah did a story on the Golden Spike, the Mercy Park, and the Centennial Celebration. There's some newspaper articles and ads that are out there. We have a
has rendering that's gonna go in the car show with Historic 25th Street Car Show. That's one of the coloring book pages. So kind of some fun stuff, but it's just kind of everywhere and all over social media, of course. I didn't put that in the slides, but good press. Still to come, I've got my Mays. I just realized I had my dates mixed up there, but on May 25th, we've got another one of the smaller educational series that'll happen at the Union Station, celebrating the day the first bricks were laid. And that's geared towards families and youth to learn about building blocks. And then on May 31st, this will be a really special day where we will exhume the time capsules from the Union Station that were laid, the first one in 1888 and the second one in 1924. They were combined in 1924 together as far as everything that we've read and been able to research. So we'll absolutely have you all there for that. In the 5 to 6 o'clock hour, it's just going to be kind of an open reception. But at 6 o'clock, that's when the ceremony will begin outside at the time capsule, where it will be chiseled away. It will be having been chiseled away during the day. And then by 6 o'clock, it will be able to be exhumed from its location. And then it'll be taken inside the Browning Theater and we'll have a live streaming option. So I'm sure a lot of people will want to come and see that and to be able to accommodate that, we'll be live streaming it. In some of the books that we've read that the Masons have given us about the proceedings of that day, it's been said that it was the largest gathering of people in the territory or the Utah territory at the time. And so there's some really fun history that goes along with that. And then also just the excitement of finding out what's in that time capsule and revealing it live. We'll have screens set up so that anybody in the theater will be able to see it almost like a cooking show. This is what you do, so I explain it. So we have cameras above and cameras in front. So everybody inside and outside, we have screens set up inside and outside as well, and then live streaming. So
What's the day of that again?
May 31st, Friday. And that'll, that live reveal will happen from 7 to 8. And then as those items are presented and spoken about from local historians on the stage, they'll also be displayed on tables so that the community can actually see those up close in person for a couple hours. So, and then we'll have them displayed eventually. We just don't know what they are, how to display them yet. So, and then in July, the big boy, we got news that the big boy was going to visit. If any of you were here for the sesquicentennial, that was a pretty big deal. So we're happy to have it back. It'll be here July 20th and 21st, which is a Saturday and Sunday. So we have extended hours, but it'll be parked out on the south end of the Union Station, as well as 9 of their complimentary cars will also be inside our tracks. And one of them is a museum car that you can walk through and experience. So September, we'll have the Roaring Ponies experience. Hashtag done. Get your tickets in November, and then our big celebration finale will be at the end of November. And then these are just some of the static things that are up now or have been up. Again, the Heart of Ogden is our main exhibit. We have self-guided tours, so you can zap the QR code and do some self-guided tours around the station, around downtown. We just opened the Chinese Railroad Worker exhibit this last Friday, and so it's up through June. It's up through June. And then as part of the Centennial, our free ramp Saturdays will be June, July, and August, and those will be Centennial themed as well. And then our community art show will be themed where Ogden begins, what it's here. A couple updates. We did receive ramp funding. So we have $70,000 from a ramp grant to help with the Centennial celebration. So we're really grateful for that. And we are submitting another grant to Union Pacific at the end of the month to help with some of that as well. The musical composition is underway, and he's sending me some snips of some handwritten music that he started on. So that's kind of fun to see. And that'll be performed by a live orchestra in November. Another thing that we did for accessibility, speaking of the Heart of Ogden exhibit, it is something that you have to kind of stand and walk around and spend some time with. And so our museum staff printed it in large bold print in booklets as well. So you can, if you're having trouble standing or visiting that physically, you can come to Union Station and sit on a bench and actually read all of the content of that exhibit without having to stand and walk around it. So that's cool. And then the oral histories that we did as part of that, we have received in video and print, and those are accessible. If you make an appointment, you can actually come and read those, and they'll also be housed at the station. So. Oh. And that was everything about the centennial for now. Today, this is actually pretty cool. This morning, we received the newly restored Western Pacific. It's been up at the UTA paint shop for a little over a year, and it's been restored. So right there, you can see the before and after pictures, and it pulled in today. And this is big. There's train sounds, but it's not as exciting without the train sounds. It was ringing its bell and making all kinds of noise, but that was just this morning in the snow. Yeah. Oh. Exciting things. So,
Did it come in under its own power, or it's
No,
just a
it-
shell of the train that?
no, it can be, it's a diesel engine and it's operational.
Okay.
But with the regulations with tracks and Union Pacific and all of that, it's safer and more accepted to have them pull it in for us using their engine. So it can be driven, but we opted to have UP deliver it to us. So that's it.
Just a comment on that, on the Chinese railroad exhibit. You got some amazing press on that too. You know, that was probably a little bit after, but a great article in the Tampa Examiner about that. So that would be worth looking into. And I know, just wanted to talk for a minute, and you're not completely done with that RFP, but some of the council members just wanted a kind of on sort of a Union Station planning. So this is just one part that you're moving forward with, and I just thought to take a minute.
Yeah, so we've drafted an RFP. It's about 99% done. We met just last week on some final edits. But it'll be released as part of the development and the restoration of having the Union Station museums moved to a new location and a new museum. So that RFP will cover the planning and design as well as the architectural drawings and exhibit design. So it's kind of a big RFP, and we hope to get some teams of design, museum designers, planners, and exhibitions to come together on teams to bid on that. So.
Now there's activities this weekend, Friday, Saturday at
Oh,
Union
yes, it's
Station
our
as well, right?
Heritage Fest. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything I had on the slides today was very specific, like to Centennial, but it is our Heritage Festival this weekend. So all day Friday and Saturday, we have music and food and all the different cultures represented. So.
Yeah, sounds great.
May I ask a question? I meant to send this email, but I did not get a chance to do it yet. I had a constituent asking me about how an entity might go about applying to use space in the station. Not, maybe like how, there's a restaurant that uses part of the space and nurture the creative mind. And so are there other opportunities for people to apply to use space like that?
Right now, we don't have any open available space to rent. We're all pretty much crammed in there as it is, so.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I just, they asked and I was like, I have no idea. I was gonna send them to you, so I'll do that.
We do have, rental opportunities for, events and meetings. We have plenty of that, but for permanent right now, all of our spaces are full.
So I just want to make a comment. So I just, a couple weeks ago, got back from Washington DC and, was able to go through a lot of the museums there. And I know that we've talked about this, but I'm really loving where you guys are going with this, but telling the history, but not just showing us something. You're starting to step us through the history of Ogden and why it's important. And so the Chinese workers and, it's just, I'm glad that that's the direction you're going. And I know that you're going to need more space. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing that because, man, it was great to just walk through and see history, whether that you were in one of the museums or another museum. It was just, it told the story. It told the story. So that was great. Thank you.
And then two of my updates since you're here, so you mentioned the first highlight concert, you can mention that. And then I was also just going to mention, you know, just in terms of the upcoming marathon, just a little bit about, you know, the festival that ends. So I don't know if you'd like to just update that since you're more directly involved, or maybe kind of a note about some of the Finish Line Festival activities.
Yeah, we have another big weekend after Heritage Festival this weekend, and next weekend we have the Ogden Marathon. And then also the first Twilight concert on the 16th and the marathon's on the 18th. And I've already looked at the weather and it's gonna be sunny and 70s. But yeah, I mean, we want to invite you all down. Of course, the Ogden Marathon is 23 years running. It's an Ogden City owned event. It's very, you know, very important to the city. And we have the festival up at the ice sheet on that Friday packet pickup. It's one of the prettiest ones I've ever seen. They have great vendors, it's just very, very professional, something to be really proud of. And then the Finish Line Festival will be just downtown Saturday, as you get to watch all of the runners come in and finish their accomplishments, as well as the 500 little kids that run around the block and finish right alongside of full marathoners. It's really special. So a whole day, but it does wrap up early, so you want to get down there sometime between 8 o'clock and noon to really capture the biggest part of it.
Yeah, great, lots of free activities going on for that, music and all sorts of things. So, yeah, thanks for all you do, Christy. Lots of
Thank you,
good
Christy.
things coming up. So. Great. Well, I might just scoot over.
Yeah.
That's like a little bit of awkward angle right there. And thank you. I appreciate having the opportunity to give a little administrative update tonight. We have a few items. I think I will start by acknowledging that this is Municipal Clerks Week. And you say you had a few treats. We have a little treat for you all. Thank you, Tracy. But it's really they made some fun things down there. So just in case you don't get a chance to stop by the recorder's office. On those out, but
Thank you.
The city council obviously knows so much of what our recorder's office does because you see them every week and they're responsible for all the public notice that happens, but they do so much more with our records, archiving, which is so important. I mean, they're sort of the keepers of a lot of Ogden City history, and Tracy just informed me that the state archives is going to be featuring Ogden City records, Ogden City recorder's office this fall, in kind of a spotlight. Do you want to say something about that?
We did a records project, historical records project. We found about 15 boxes of water records, engineering records in our inactive record storage. And some of those pictures were used in the presentation that engineering made to you about the water line. And so we were visiting with the archives, state archives about that, and they want to do a highlight on Ogden and their records, just showing that historical records can have an impact on current business, which is sometimes hard for other groups to figure out how to use them. So that was something we were really excited about.
Sounds great. And even more sort of specific than just photographs, as part of the pipeline project, Tracy had to do a lot of research about the old agreements that the city had with the Bureau of Reclamation and Forest Service, going back several decades, just as, part of that project. So sometimes the photographs are fun, but of course the records and the history of agreements and different things are, invaluable to present situations that we have. So just thank you, Tracy, and your team do a great job. Appreciate that. We have a couple other announcements, just to get on your calendar in advance. I wanted to make you aware that, we're moving forward with with a couple different processes, both the general plan process and the zone Ogden plan. We have a number of public hearings, but we will have our first open house for the general plan. It's the branding for that is Plan Ogden, but as you know, and David Sawyer is here, he's been very involved in, we have under the umbrella of You Make Ogden. So we've been having a number of open houses down at Union Station, whether we're talking about, one time there was a Union Station topic, there was a 25th Street topic. We've already had a zone Ogden, and this is going to be Plan Ogden, and it will be June 26th at 5:30 p.m. And we're, David and his team have done an excellent job about keeping, it's great that they're in the same location. We do a lot of public noticing on our social media we have a specific, we have some dedicated web pages to these events on our website, and David's team does a lot of social media on all of this. And so I think it's nice to have the public sort of getting used to some of these events, and they're the similar look and feel, same location. We have snacks and a lot of city staff is there, and you all come down. So we wanted to make sure we're getting it on your calendar and have an opportunity to take a look at that.
Time was that one again?
So that's 5:30, June 26th. And that is part of Plan Ogden, and it will be really be a first general plan open house that we have with our third-party contractors.
And that's at the Union Station?
Yeah, at the Union Station. So that is exciting, and Bill talked about it maybe a little bit, but work is already underway from our contractor. They've already met with the Diversity Commission and just to get ideas of how to enhance our involvement with our varied citizenry. They've met with some high school students to listen to them about some of their ideas for the future of Ogden. And so they're really starting to do some community outreach already, which has been great. Then I wanted to report on a couple fun projects. We want to make sure that in the future, if you weren't looped in as well this year, but I do want to make sure that the council members and staff are getting the information that we have when we do our Make a Difference Day, if you're interested. But what this is, we do this annually, and it tends to be an opportunity for employees to get out of their offices, get out, from their desk jobs and go out and do a lot of beautification projects around the city. And we have some community partners coming, but I wanted to give you a little summary of the types of projects that happen. So as you look around, and it provides quite a boost, almost an emotional, not only just an actual, getting things done on the ground, but kind of an emotional boost to our parks and public services team as they're going into their busy season of the year to just have other employees out there helping them do their work. So there's a lot of cleanup street, like airport had some road cleanup going on. We had a cemetery project where we were, and I participated in that one down at the pet cemetery area on the north, from the northeast corner, and we were prepping the flower beds, and it was just fun. They said this is going to be saving the person that is actually coming out and planting the flowers in just a week or so. They just appreciate so much that we're just prepping, pulling weeds, doing things like that. It was work done at golden hours, spreading mulch, the golf course parking lot, a lot of the trailheads were hit. Union Station, there was a lot of work. David's team participated in that. We had Visit Ogden come down. The ACE team was down at Union Station, and then a lot of work continued on the Parkway Trail at various areas. But when you look around, you're going to start to see the impact of these projects, and just know that all the city employees started, kick that off. And then of course our parks and public works crew will continue to work on that as the weather warms up. But that was a fun event. And also wanted to report on the first My Hometown work day that we had and express my appreciation to the My Hometown team that we partner with and all of our city employees that are involved in that as well. It's a tremendous amount of work by our code enforcement team but not just, a lot of our employees are actually volunteering for the Make a Difference Day. So I just wanted to share a story that Chris Tremea heard, was retelling because he invited all of the code and building services team and 8 employees of his team and Chris himself showed up to give service on behalf of our citizens. And these are cleaning up projects that would otherwise most likely turn into code enforcement issues. And so we were able to identify project homes and situations before they actually, and some of them, to be honest, he mentioned 3 or 4 projects that have just been problems for many, many, many years and just keep going back and forth with owners and it just challenges. And then we have this My Hometown team. And when we meet with a homeowner about their situation, they feel comfortable with this team coming in to help clean up their properties. And so Chris mentioned just how many profound stories of positivity that came out of this. And he said his quote was, "It's often a thankless job to be a code officer. However, today it was 100% smiles from those that received service and those who gave it." So they just really appreciate that, they go out and they get all this work done in it. That way it's not them, coming out with a stick at some point, sometime in the future, but really by working, through the My Hometown team, we can do this voluntarily with our citizens. And we completed over the close to 70 projects around the city. And so this was the first of 4. And we have, the next one will be, there's one on June 22nd, September 14th, and October 19th. And we'll, of course, send out reminders. But if you haven't had the opportunity to go out and see this work, we had one property that at one point had 200 volunteers. And I think they said there were 8, literally 8 dumpsters that were, and this is doing with the residents, that something happens in their lives and they just get out of control. We all know how, some of these things can happen, but so it's heartwarming and it's just been a tremendous collaboration with the city to participate in. Do you have any questions about that? Or I know
Yeah,
John wants- yeah, sorry.
do the employees track their volunteer hours at all?
We have, not all of them, some of them, were doing it as paid work, and even if it was, part of the service. So, but we had a couple employees that, just kind of went on their own. And we do have a policy where you can trade some, sick leave and for some volunteer for paid volunteer time if you like. And we just remind employees of that periodically, so they can do work on a Saturday on a project, and if they'd like to, they can get paid for it. We don't have that happen much because I think the employees just like to do that, like to get involved in the community and just like Ogden and just do that. But there are some policies where they can actually track it and turn that into to make it paid time for them.
Barrett, can I back up to the zoning and unified development code and all of that, the general plan that's going on? I have had a handful of conversations about this process and have reached out to some people that I know in my district that I wanted to share this with and encourage them to look into volunteering, serving on partners committees. And I had one today where the gentleman suggested that, well, you're the legislative body. Why don't you just decide what it's gonna be and introduce it and pass it? And I said, well, because we as a collective body don't have the expertise around city planning and ordinance and all that stuff and zoning. I said, we're familiar with it, but we don't plan cities. There are professionals that do that. And he said, so all of our city employees are doing that. And I said, well, even on that scale, you know, they've reached out for some help. And he said, so we've got a contractor, which led to how much are we paying Logan Simpson? Do you know roughly what that contract is for the work that they're doing for us?
We do have an approximate. We budgeted 650,000 for that contract. It would be over 2 years. I'm not sure how much is encumbered right now, but I think the contract allows us to.
For 650. Thank you, Lisa.
Does some of that funding, I think, includes some staffing? There's additional funding for some part-time staff
Oh,
help
that's right, yep.
for planning as well. That's above.
And that is not unreasonable. Small cities are about 150 to 200,000. And when I'm talking small cities, not.
Not Ogden, yeah. No, I think
And those that do it like every 5 to 10 years, not those that have waited. 5 years.
More than anything, I think that the individual was surprised that a city of our size has to reach out for consulting services for projects of this kind of size and really figured that we've got the employees to do it in-house. And I really hadn't thought that people really believed that happened, but he did. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
A couple other small things. I wanted to acknowledge that we have, people aren't aware, you know, things are moving forward with Breeze Airlines. They have 4 flights a week, as most of you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. But they have something called Ticket Tuesdays. And we've had a number of individuals who take advantage of this, but Ticket Tuesdays is every Tuesday from 9 to 11. Anybody can go down to the airport and purchase a ticket in person and you don't have to pay online fees. So it's just one of these things that we want to make sure that the public is aware of this. And if you are not comfortable with online, or if you want to save those fees, just you can go down to the airport and there will be people there to do that. So
Great.
yeah, actually it is. And we've had we're working with the Breeze Marketing, also Visit Ogden on it's we've only started February, so it's taking a little time. I know there's a lot of word of mouth that's being spread, but more and more we're trying to get the word out that Breeze is here and that they're flying basically to Disneyland. So that's fun. That's one of the more popular destinations for our region, and we want that to spread the word on that this is a great opportunity. But also, if some individuals like to purchase tickets in person, that's just Ticket Tuesdays, 9 to 11. They can go down and do that.
Disneyland or Dodger Stadium, right, Glenn? Go see Shohei.
Other things, it's only, I think it's less than a half an hour. You can Uber to the beach. So that's, there's a lot of things within reach of that destination. So you can be on a flight pretty quick and doing a lot of fun things from Ogden. So.
Mara, how are they determining the ridership? Are they hitting the quotas that they wanted to hit? Or?
Yeah, we're getting that information back, and I know that it just picked up a little bit recently. So there was things did quite well when we started in the winter and the spring break, and then there was a little bit of a drop, and now things are picking up again. And we're hoping with the summer vacations that it's going to start picking up again. But we're getting those numbers. I think I've discussed that before, that we don't release those numbers because of kind of proprietary information from Breeze, but that's why we're just wanting to keep the marketing up, keep the excitement up, and we're hoping that when school gets out, the summertime is going to be a real, a great time for taking those trips again, but I think there's some ups and downs with just anticipated how people plan trips and vacations and all that, but we recently found out that there is it's apparently that there's a lot of Orange County students who like to come to Utah for college. And so there's maybe a market there that we're tapping into, but I don't know how we discovered that, but I think somebody said that there's, just University of Utah is just a very popular choice, and maybe we could get Weber State too, but they're flying to Utah, and this could be a great way for them to get to Utah. So we're hearing more and more about markets on the other side, and we're trying to promote our own region to fly in that direction, but there's some opportunities to promote on from flying to Ogden as well from that side. We're looking into all of that. Those were the main things I had, so if you have any questions for me.
What was the capital improvement, the TSA holding room? Is that not something that exists? Is this new construction that will have to take place? And if so, what is a TSA holding room?
Yeah, you and I were, when we
Yeah, we
walked
toured
through
out
there,
there.
I think
Yeah.
there's just some more, work that needs to be done. So I can get a little bit more detail on that. So I think I know that we're just still, finishing up that space. I'll make a note of that and get some more detail for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I have we got a pretty depressing report a few weeks ago about park vandalism.
Yeah.
And you guys are gonna look into some ways to ramp up enforcement and that kind of thing. Have you done something? Or is that something you want to keep close to the vest, or can you tell us?
Well, I can, it is something that we're very discouraged about. We have, just as we're completing 2 park restroom projects, we've had, I would say, an unusually high amount of vandalism, and there always is. It's something that Ogden is not unique. All, communities throughout the nation, throughout Utah, experience this in their parks, and we are looking at a couple different things. And so there's nothing final, and I'd like to report back when we have a little bit more, but I can say that we're definitely looking into ways to try to prevent this. It could have to do with design of some of these structures and make them a little bit more open, the orientation of doors, maybe facing the street or different things. So we're looking into design is one thing. We're certainly looking at lighting, and we have cameras on these areas, but we're also looking into some reward programs. We've done this before, but we're thinking we're now just contemplating increasing that. So and I'll get back to you with more details, but the idea is that if citizens can provide information that leads to a conviction, then they would be eligible for a monetary award. And then there's some other things that we're looking at too, but we're trying to move quickly on some different approaches to stop that, to be preventative. And so we're looking at a few other things. We're also possibly looking, besides the reward program, we're aware there's some citizen, Salt Lake City has a program that we're researching that involves more citizen monitors. And so I've asked the police department to do some research.
Adopt a park kind of a.
Kind of an adopt a park. But I appreciate you bringing that up. It's disheartening, to say the least, but it's a spectrum of individuals, a spectrum of scenarios that we have happening at these.
Well,
areas.
it's absolutely unacceptable to be assaulting our employees.
Yeah, it's right. It's demoralizing, to be honest. They go out and put, as I said, we're just completing 2 new ones. They're providing services to our public and trying to beautify the parks, increase the, you know, the enjoyment and usability of these areas, and then just the, you know, and then they replace, you know, electrical parts, hardware fixtures, and these are specialized parts, and then within days, things, they just get ripped off and ripped off the walls, and wires are stolen, and it's, so we're working really hard to come up with some solutions, and I would be happy to report back when we get some more concrete ideas, but thank you for bringing that up.
There's one other item I had, one of our information items was the North Monroe water line. And I noticed in there, I talked with, I don't remember who, whether it was Taylor or Justin, about the striping. I have not talked to one person that likes the way they striped it, they restriped it. And so unless they come up with some other data that they're relying on somewhere, it, you know, it's really a wonky deal to have a 99-foot right of way that's 2 lanes. It just makes travel feel weird, you know, going down that road. And so, and it's been also reported that it hasn't really helped the problem that was meant to resolve, address, which was the speeding. The Monroe's just that road, you know, people like to go up there and speed. It's just a wide road, no matter how it's striped. So, anyway, I bring that to your attention. Hopefully we can revisit that before we get married to the idea of redoing it.
I'll bring that up, and
Thank you, appreciate it.
So they just reduced it to.
Sounds good. All right, thank you, Mara.
Thank you.
Any other council business or comments? Or any, you know, business comments from the council? All right, with that, we've got 15 minutes before our city council. We are adjourned.